really great to be here today and look at all these fabulous delegates here. Thanks to everyone who coming along who, like me, I'm quite sure you do believe in the new Pilbara. Now, before I do that, and just in the spirit of transparency, it's something that I'm particularly concerned about. I just wanted to check if there was anyone here in this room who has any concerns about their own citizenship. No? Put your hand up, sir. I'm sorry, you'll have to go. You'll have to go. For the record, I'm a fourth generation dinky-die Aussie. Maybe fifth, but we're a bit, it's a bit questionable, so I don't think I should claim the fifth. But anyway, now that we've got that cleared up, I'm sure I don't need to tell the audience here that the Pilbara as a region has had a pretty unique experience in the last 20-odd years and that many opportunities have been created. We've just had the biggest mining boom this country has seen since we found gold in the 1850s. As someone like me who was born and bred in Kalgoorlie, I'm well of the significant side effects, both good and bad, a community can endure, living through those huge highs, and the awareness has shaped my opinion on the future of the Pilbara. We know mining communities need to be resilient because mining is an inherently speculative industry. I like to think of the mining and resources industries in the Pilbara as the community's anchor tenant. These industries guarantee a certain number of jobs and can also provide local businesses with opportunities. We can talk a lot about supply chain optimisation, but ultimately neither industry nor the federal government, nor the state government for that matter, can control the world prices for our commodities. So our mining communities need to be as resilient and, to a degree, as self-reliant as possible, which includes diversifying the local economy to weather those troughs when they come. And they will come, as history shows us. Today I want to talk about the green shoots and what we're doing at a federal policy level to encourage those shoots to grow, but also talk about the big picture. If I just start with the big picture, during 2014 I was a member of the Joint Select Committee on Northern Australia, which produced the Pivot North report. The following year, our government released the Northern Australia White Paper, which effectively incorporated those recommendations from Pivot North into that paper. And the White Paper showed that our federal government was really dinkum about the North. Many of the initiatives in that White Paper have been acted upon, but I believe, and today is timely for us to be talking about it, I believe we need to talk about Mark II Northern Australia White Paper because we've done a lot that's in that first and we need to refresh it. So as someone who represents the northwest of Australia, I would suggest that the next White Paper should be based on the following planks to drive economic development in the Pilbara. And I know that you will hear a lot about these subjects either earlier today or later, but I just want to give you my opinion and just some good examples of where the federal government has come in to lend a hand. So there's no real surprises here. Focus on energy, water, transport, investment and infrastructure, and I'll also throw education in there, given it's something that I'm very passionate about. So all of these planks are vital to ensure that the North, which includes the Pilbara, is developed sustainably and also carefully. Because without one, the Pilbara, I believe, will not reach its potential. You cannot support investment in mining without a good energy and water policy to encourage it. You cannot support infrastructure without supporting private sector investment. And we must focus on social infrastructure to ensure the livability of the Pilbara. So we need it all to happen all at the same time. Well, it's easier said than done, of course, so it's incredibly challenging. So we just talk about energy to start with. So energy, of course, is currently very topical on the national stage. We saw the Prime Minister yesterday talking about another meeting with the energy companies. But in WA, we can be forgiven in some parts of Western Australia for thinking that we are immune from the energy crisis that's currently being experienced on the East Coast. It is true that we've had a certain amount of protection because of our domestic gas policy in WA, but also we've had a reasonably balanced approach to renewables as well. But there are still some pretty unique challenges, and I'm sure I don't need to tell those from the North that are here today, with respect to the energy sector in the Pilbara. When we talk about the Northwest, we're talking about the smaller scale production for off-grid sites, and we've also got communities that are off the grid. with larger energy production centres for our large towns often being the most stable and cost-effective. We know there is a very high penetration, or beginning to be a high penetration of renewables in the northwest, but we know there could be more. As we know, it is incredibly expensive to run the diesel generators that service communities and many of the off-grid mining sites. The federal government has invested capital into improving the viability of sustainable, cheap renewable power for some of these off-grid areas of the northwest, and of course I would like to see much more of that. Just a couple of examples. The federal government has invested $35 million into building a solar power plant at the Durack copper mine, which is near Meekatharra. This is going to explore the viability of a large-scale solar plant to efficiently and also effectively power that mine site. And more recently, and this is at a community level, we've invested $500,000 into the 5 Mile community in the Pilbara to see if a smaller scale project could work to power an off-grid Indigenous community. I reckon that project's a cracker. I'm really pleased about that one. We know that energy costs are higher in the northwest because of the challenges of these small populations and large distances, but we are working on innovative ways to deal with this challenge to increase energy independence. But we do need to focus on how we can support new and existing mining projects who often find the gas pipeline close by to the project, but because they're unable to access the gas, they remain reliant on diesel. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that today. That 5 Mile community project that I referred to gives me a neat little segue into water policies for the north, because this solar power plant will also power a water treatment facility for that community. So talking about water, we know that good, reliable water infrastructure is crucial to building sustainable regional communities. And there's no bigger water infrastructure project in the northwest than the ORD scheme. The ORD is a case study in how the federal and the state government can cooperate to deliver real results for Kununurra and also that region by generating outside investment and activating a local workforce. And that, folks, is really what I want to see more of. More cooperation between state, federal and local governments, to me, means more growth and also means a more sustainable Pilbara. We cannot do it alone. And by the way, the federal government can't make it up. It actually needs support, and the ideas to come from the private investors, the local and the state governments. We know that there's a focus on achieving a diverse range of agricultural crops throughout the northwest, and of course we know about the hope that we're going to boost more cattle numbers in the area. And this has been supported by a couple of other recent federal government initiatives. Recently we've contributed $960,000 for a Pilbara irrigated agricultural feasibility study, and $268,000 for a pre-feasibility study for an irrigation scheme in the Oakover Valley, which is also in the Pilbara. So they're encouraging, they're green shoots, but we need to do more. Now, I told you I was going to talk about education, and some may think, well, what's that got to do with the Pilbara? Well, I think it's got a lot to do with the Pilbara, and it's a potential industry for the Pilbara. This is something that I'm particularly passionate about, and something that especially with respect to tertiary education in the Pilbara, and something I've been pushing for since I was elected back in 2013. And I think in the Pilbara we have a very unique opportunity, and it has, as I said, the potential to be a new industry. After considerable pushing from me, I'm very proud that the federal government has announced funding to support new regional university centres, and the Pilbara is well placed to receive funding to create one of these hubs. Initially a campus in Karratha, but there is definitely scope to expand to the Pilbara. That one was for you, Camillo. Where is he? He's gone. The Pilbara University Centre application is being supported by the Geraldton University Centre, and from which this particular model is based, and this support and expertise has been invaluable as they work on getting the model off the ground. I'm very proud to be a member of the steering committee. Now, the importance of regional university centres, as evidenced by the success of the Geraldton model, is that it creates a new industry, which allows for the younger regional students to stay in their local hometown or close by and study, and it also gives options for those second-time rounders, those mature age students. This all helps to improve the livability of the Pilbara. Now we see in Geraldton, the University Centre is based around courses that reflects Geraldton's role as a regional service hub. So the courses offered are really needs-based, so you see more teaching and social work and also nursing. But in the Pilbara, of course, there's potential to provide those courses, and I can tell you at the last graduation ceremony in Geraldton, there were 10 teachers that graduated. That was the end of last year. Every single one of them's got a job teaching in Geraldton. So it's local kids getting their education and they're staying there. And that's the vision I have for the Pilbara. So in the Pilbara, there is potential to provide those courses, but also to expand the courses to include, won't be a surprise to you, like engineering, mining engineering, and also courses that are relevant to the Pilbara. And my vision is that we could create a world-class Pilbara School of the Mines. Now, don't tell my mother I said that, because she still lives in Kalgoorlie and she holds Kalgoorlie School of Mines very dear to her heart. But I happen to think that the Pilbara has actually got more to offer, given the diversity of the industries involved in the resources and the mining game. This would obviously be of significant benefit to the local mining and resources companies to be able to train and employ locals, but there's an obvious appeal to partner universities to be able to sell as part of their course, perhaps a year, maybe it's the second or third year of your course from Central Queensland University, where you have to go to the Pilbara to do that second or third year. And that's why I'm excited by the prospect. It's not just the nursing and the teaching and the IT, but it's what we could potentially build, and I think the sky's the limit. We also, for the young students who come across the Nullarbor to get their education in the Pilbara, there's obviously huge potential and scope for site visits and for hands-on training, maybe even a unit where you have to intern at a site. So I think there's huge opportunity. I do believe that a Pilbara University Centre will help us to grow the region as a whole, and it really does offer another opportunity. Its value should not be underestimated. And I just want to take this opportunity to just thank, I see Peter Long, Mayor of Karratha City Council, just want to thank Karratha City Council for their support with respect to the Pilbara University Centre. Oh yes, give him a clap. All starts here. And just while I'm talking about social infrastructure, it would be remiss of me just to actually mention that we are now looking like getting a headspace in the Pilbara. People may not know much about headspace, but something I've been pushing for some time. This will be quite a unique, innovative model for the Pilbara, and this supports young people with their mental health. We're now currently creating what the model will look like, but rather than just be a bricks and mortar in one spot, that has to be more of a roaming service. So I'm very excited about that, because that's something for our young people, and I'm sure they'll be very appreciative of it. So I think that's enough about the social infrastructure. I'm also involved with Indigenous Affairs. I'm the chair of the Indigenous Affairs Standing Committee. We've been doing an inquiry into education models for Indigenous youth, so it would be remiss of me not to mention that. We've worked very hard, and there's going to be some fabulous recommendations coming out of that. I have a vision of an AFL girls' boarding school in Karratha or Port Hedland or in Newman, because we see it's happening on the East Coast, and my question is, why aren't we doing it here in Western Australia? So I haven't talked very much about the role of the Indigenous community in the Pilbara, but they're the sort of things that I'm focused on, which I think will make a difference more broadly to the Pilbara community. So back now to transport, off the social issues. It would be remiss of me not to at least touch briefly on transport infrastructure, which of course is one of those planks that I mentioned earlier. We know, with respect to mining and resources industries, how vital road infrastructure is, and I always think of the roads leading to Pilbara, I always call them, they're like the economic arteries of Australia, so it's critically important that we look after them. The federal government has invested significant funds into a host of regional road projects, all of which are designed to increase the livability and also the safety of regional communities, and also to boost economic opportunities for the regions. If we just look at the Northwest Coastal Highway upgrades and their potential for boosting tourism and industry throughout the Northwest, we invested some $100 million on the widening and strengthening of the Northwest Coastal. Many hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the Great Northern Highway, most of which was spent in the Pilbara region to support the mining activities and the locals, and a lot of that was spent in Port Hedland as well. And just recently we committed another $43 million for work on the Marble Bar Road. So these are just a couple of very quick examples of upgrades that are being funded by the federal government. But my question now to you, and also to especially the locals in the room, is what is the next frontier in the Pilbara? What are the roads that, as a federal government, what I've talked about are Highway Number 1, they're federal government responsibilities. But where are the other roads that are going to open up other opportunities? So what are the next road infrastructure priorities? I was going to talk quite a bit about the support for small business for the federal government. I won't go through that in detail, but I want you to know that my conversations with Malcolm Turnbull, when I talk about the Pilbara, a lot of people focus on the big end of town. I talk about the small business people and their contribution that they are making to not only the Pilbara but to Western Australia. In my electorate of Durack, I've got 23,000 small businesses, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that our tax structure is working for them. So if anyone wants to talk to me a little bit later about small business, please do. Briefly on infrastructure, I think it would be remiss of me not to at least mention the Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund. Some of you may be aware of that, otherwise known as NAIF. This is a facility where it's a loan facility which is supported by the state, not necessarily the state government, but the state does need to support the NAIF project. And I do know we've got 3 or 4 projects in the north of Western Australia that are currently going through their due diligence process. So that is good news, but you know, we need more. So again, if there's anybody here who wants to have a chat with me about what the criteria is for NAIF, then please do. So I might end here, and while I always like to end on a positive note, and I don't think too many have fallen asleep, so that's been good, I just wanted to share my observations about the different approaches to the development of Northern Australia. Here in WA, let's make no mistake, we're competing against Queensland. And whether it's Queensland local or state government, I believe that they are definitely more assertive with their interaction with the federal government. With respect to their needs, and they're usually very organised. And I think here in WA, we could be criticised for being too polite. But I understand this. As a state, we see ourselves as the frontier state, the state with the attitude that we can do it ourselves, go it alone. But I think those days have got to be over, folks, in terms of the Northern Australia policy. And we now need to work together. We've got to leave politics aside if we really want to make the Pilbara the new Pilbara. We have to be more assertive about what our needs are, and only then will we see the full potential of the Pilbara. As the local member, I'm excited about playing my role to make that happen. Thanks for having me.